Hi folks, and welcome to the Is It Worth It for the T-45, a Tier 2 premium light tank for the Russians. This was a gift tank given out by Wargaming for its 18th anniversary, and it's not currently available from the tech tree or the gift shop. But like all other gift tanks that Wargaming have given out in the past, I have absolutely no doubts that it will be made available again soon, probably as part of a package. So if you haven't gotten your hands on the tank yet, the question we're going to be asking today is this tank worth it? Now, starting with the history, this is a prototype. Only one was ever built, but it did see combat. Now, in 1942, a factory number 37 in Sverdlovsk, I'm not sure if that pronunciation is correct, but factory number 37 in the Ukraine was building T-60s. The T-60 was the main Russian light tank at that time, but it was already considered obsolete. Now, the T-70, its successor, had already been designed and approved, and factories were slowly being switched over to T-70 production. But there were severe shortages of parts, and T-70 production across all of the Soviet bloc was delayed. T-60s were still being built as a result, but once again, because of the shortage of parts, there were delays. The Soviets were still trying to get their tank production back on track, having moved most of their tank building industries back from the front and away from the invading Germans, relocating most of it to the Ural Mountains. In fact, all the workers and engineers and designers in factory number 37 had been relocated there from other places, and they had previously had a lot more freedom. They were designing the T-37A, the T-38 and the T-40 amphibious tanks, but regardless of the fact whether or not they were designing other tanks, when they got to factory number 37 they were told to build T-60s if they had the parts, and they were waiting to build T-70s, and again were waiting on the parts. Now, factory number 37 were supposed to be building a minimum of 200 T-60s a month, but because of the parts shortages, particularly the Gaz 202 engine, they were only building about 100 complete tanks a month. So with their engineering and design backgrounds, they were upset over the fact they couldn't meet their targets and the shortage of parts. So, with their backgrounds and previously building other tanks, they decided to resolve the problem themselves. Now, the first of the ideas was to redesign the T-60 to use the ZIS-16 engine. Now, that was an engine that was designed to be used for buses. The redesign resulted in a T-60 that was less noisy, had a top speed of 40 kilometers an hour, that was actually 1 kilometer an hour faster than the T-60 with the gas engine, and it was easier to access and repair the engine. In fact, the only problem with putting the ZIS-16 into a T-60 was the fact it overheated, and that would require a redesign of the exhaust system. But still, the ingenuity of using a bus engine in a T-60 to overcome the shortage of engines, and redesigning the T-60 to use that engine, it impressed Soviet High Command enough that Soviet High Command requested that 5 of these new T-60s using a ZIS engine be built for testing. Now, they also came up with a second plan, maybe to try and change their production or increase production. And the second plan was to basically produce the T-45. Now, this was a brand new tank. It was going to be a hybrid between the T-60 and the T-70, and it would use the ZIS-16 engine too. It would be up-armored from the T-60 with 35mm of sloped armor and upgunned to a 45mm gun. Now, Soviet High Command weren't as enthusiastic about this plan because it meant that while the T-45 would actually be superior to the T-60, the additional weight from the armor and the turret that would need to be designed in order to carry this gun would basically make it, it would reduce the mobility, increase the weight, it would place extra stress on the suspension and the engine, and essentially it would still be inferior to the T-70. It would be better than the T-60, but it would still be inferior to the T-70 they were hoping to build. However, they did decide, or they did allow, one prototype to be built and undergo trials. Now, with the production lines in factory number 37 set up for T-60 production, the T-45 would mainly have to be built by hand on the factory floor. And it shows here with probably some wonderful modeling by Wargaming, because Soviet tanks, you know, they had cast metal. You know, a lot of the parts of Soviet tanks were cast metal. They were welded together. But the T-45 has no welds. What you can see here are rivets. Now, it's got rivets just like British tanks because the tank had to be hand-built. It wasn't built on a production line. So they hand-built this on the floor of factory number 37. Factory 37 designed a new turret, brand new turret from scratch to hold a 45mm gun. They up-armoured the front of the hull so it was better than the T-60, and they fitted a ZIS-5 engine because of the shortage of parts. Now, it was supposed to come with a ZIS-16, but because of that shortage, they took the engine from a ZIS-5 bus. Yes, the bus was named after the engine, so they took the ZIS-5 engine from a ZIS-5 bus, even though it was supposed to be a ZIS-16 engine. Now, this was an engine that already had 12,000 kilometers on it, so it was a pretty much very well-used engine, but it was the only one that was available. And the request for the one prototype also requested that the trials include a 200-kilometer drive. So it was a less powerful engine than the one planned, a ZIS-5 as opposed to the ZIS-16, but it was the only one available. And because the engine was already worn, a proposed top speed of 40 kilometers an hour dropped to just 37 kilometers an hour. But with everything in place and riveted together, the tank underwent trials in May 1942, which it completed extremely successfully. Even though the original order was that the tank be trialed for 200 kilometers, it actually traveled 1,505 kilometers as part of the trials, and it traveled 1,500 kilometers across asphalt, gravel, rubble, and mud. The engine held up remarkably well, considering it was less powerful than the engine it was supposed to be, and it had already seen 12,000 kilometers. And the gun performed extremely well. The gun during the trials hit 25 out of 25 shells. So, you know, okay, there was one minor problem in that the turret, which was redesigned to carry this gun, was too heavy for the tank. So even though, even though the tank successfully completed its gun trials, after shooting its gun, the turret would start to sink into the hull. It was just a little bit too heavy. But, you know, even though the hull or the turret was sinking into the hull after every shot, it still managed to hit 25 targets out of 25 with 25 shots. So yeah, it had performed incredibly well. So the trials were a big success. There were some minor difficulties with the tracks constantly breaking, but that wasn't a problem with the tank. That was a problem with the tracks. The engine overheated, but they were already aware of that and working on a new exhaust system for the engine. But because the trials were such a big success, a factory in Russia was ordered to start building ZIS-16 engines specifically for the T-45. It was also asked to start building transmission systems for it. So yeah, but however, before the project could go any further, Soviet High Command passed Rule number 1958 SS, which declared that all T-60 production should cease and switch to T-70 production, and that all BT production should switch to T-34 production. Now, as factory number 37 was building T-60s, they were now under orders to start building T-70s, and they'd never have a chance to build the T-45, so only one and only prototype, the one and only prototype, was sent into combat and pretty much was lost to history. And that's pretty much it. So let's dive into the stats and compare the T-45 Tier 2 Premium Light Tank against all the other Tier 2 Premium Light Tanks in the game. I've been playing this game so long. Originally there was only one, the T2 Light, and I've been playing so long that there are now 10 Tier 2 Premium Light Tanks available. Pretty much all of them are gift tanks with the exception of the T2 Light, but anyway, we're going to pop into Tanks GG for this. Now, I'm not going to compare it against the other 9 tanks for, one particular reason, and that is a lot of the other gift tanks are very lightly armoured and have basically autoloaders or machine guns. So it's very hard to compare the single-firing, fairly well-armoured T-45 against them. So, I'm excluding tanks like the T-1E6, the T-2 Light, the T-7 Combat Car, the Light 6C, and the L-60 because they're all lightly armoured and they all have autoloaders. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare it against the Panzer 38H for the Germans and the Panzer 2D for the Germans, even though this does have an autoloader, but it's heavily armoured and quite equivalent to the T-45. We're also going to compare it to the only other two single-shot guns on the Tiki and the Tetrarch. So we're going to be comparing it against 4 other tanks up here, and just, what are we expecting? Well, it doesn't start well. It really doesn't start well for the T-45, because when we look at firepower, what basically we've got is a tank that seems to have pretty poor DPM. Compared to all the other tanks, excluding the autoloaders, it has poor DPM. However, it does have reasonably good penetration, very good penetration, in fact, at 51 millimeters. So only the Tetrarch has it beaten. So bad DPM, so bad rate of fire, even though 17 rounds a minute isn't bad. The reload isn't great, but it does affect the DPM. But the penetration is nice, and the alpha damage is actually quite nice because it's 45 millimeter. It comes with 47 alpha compared to much higher or lower alpha on the other tanks, or slightly lower alpha on the other tanks, I should say. And then the ammo, it doesn't carry quite as much ammo as the other tanks, with the exception of the Tetrarch, but the shell velocity seems to be average, ammo capacity seems to be okay, and the potential damage seems to be okay for a tier 2. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. So yeah, the DPM definitely seems to be lacking, so it's not a good start. And then we come down to gun handling, and once again, it's a lot of negatives here. It's got the worst aim time of any of the single shot guns up here, so it's got bad aim time. However, the accuracy is okay at 0.38. If you let it aim in fully, it's as good as the other single shot guns for tier 2 on the premiums, but exception being the Panzer 2D, but that's an autoloader. When it comes to firing on the move, however, it's got the worst stats for soft hidden stats for firing on the move, even though the tank traverse or shooting while turret traverse is okay. Again, it's the worst up here. I mean, it matches the 38H and the Tetrarch, but it's far worse than the Tiki or the Panzer 2D. So it's not great at firing on the move. It's not good at firing during tank traverse or turret traverse or tank traverse. It's got some of the worst stats up here. However, the accuracy after firing, isn't terrible. It's better than most of the tanks, and yeah, the gun depression is another negative because it's got the worst gun depression of any of the tanks up here at 6 degrees. So again, gun handling looks okay. Accuracy looks okay if it's fully aimed, but really bad aim time, really bad soft stats, and the gun depression isn't great either. So yeah, it's definitely not looking good when it comes to the gun. Then we come to mobility, and it looks just average. It comes in at 41 kilometers an hour top speed, which is okay. I mean, it's not very good. Most of the other tier 2 premiums have it beaten, but it is faster than the 38H slightly. The reverse speed of 15, again, on the low side. It's got the joint worst reverse speed, so top speed average at best, reverse speed not great. The engine power is okay, but it is a heavier tank than most of the other tanks up here, so the power to weight ratio, once again, worst power to weight ratio up here as well. The terrain resistance isn't looking particularly good either. It's pretty average. You can see that some of the tanks have it beaten, some of the tanks are worse. And then the nice thing, or the one good thing I suppose I can say about the mobility, so it's got average to poor mobility, but the good thing about this tank when it comes to mobility is the terrain resistance while turning the tank. So the tank traverse is exceptionally good. So you got 54 degrees per second tank traverse, so it turns better than any of the other tanks up here. And the ground resistance while turning your tank has got the best ground resistance while turning your tank. So while it may not be the fastest, it's not terrible. It's got pretty poor reverse speed, but it's not terrible. The power to weight ratio is not good, but it's workable. But this tank can turn on a dime. It's got very, very good mobility while turning. So I suppose that's something. And then we come down to armor. And yeah, unfortunately, the armor is not as good as advertised. Again, if you just look at the stats, it's got 25 millimeters of frontal hull armor. Definitely not good. It gets beaten by the Panzer 38H and the Panzer 2D, but that doesn't tell the whole story. It does beat the Tiki and the Tetrarch, but the Panzer 2D's armor, even though it's 30 millimeters, is flat. And like the Panzer 38H, most of that armor is flat. But when it comes to the T-45, this armor may not look good, but it's sloped as opposed to flat. So 25 on front, 15, terrible side armor, and then 25 on the rear. Now, the other really, really nice thing about the armor on the T-45 is the turret armor, which is 35 millimeters all round. So it's got the second best turret armor. Only the Panzer 38H has it beaten. So the turret armor seems to be very, very good on paper, even though the hull armor doesn't look great. Another negative for the tank, unfortunately, is its health, which comes in at, where are we, 140. So it's got the lowest health, or joint lowest health, with the Tetrarch. So while the armor doesn't look too bad on it, the health is amongst the lowest of the tier 2 premiums. So yeah, these stats are making this tank look absolutely awful. When it comes to view range, again, it doesn't have the best view range, but it doesn't have the worst view range. It does beat the Tetrarch, which is blind as a bat. It's got joint view range with the Tiki, but it has less view range than the Panzer 38H or the Panzer 2D. So yeah, overall, what we've got is a gun that has very, very low DPM. Its soft gun stats pretty much poor. They've got poor aim time, poor TPM. The accuracy is okay if you let it aim in fully, but you've got that poor aim time. The gun depression is lacking compared to most of the other tanks. The mobility is average at best, although it does turn very well, and the hull armor doesn't look anything special, along with poor health and very, very average view range. But once again, the stats don't tell the whole story, because this tank's biggest strength is what just looks average when you look at its stats. The biggest strength is its armor. Essentially, the T-45, even though it's a tier 2 Russian premium light tank, is essentially a tier 2 Russian heavy tank, because the frontal armor on this thing is exceptional due to the sloping. So on paper, it has 35 millimeters of turret armor on front, but because of this huge gun mantlet that covers the front of the turret, you can see that the armor is actually, if you hit it at a bad angle, 64, but if you hit it straight on, it's about 50 millimeters of armor on the front of the turret, and most of the turret is pretty much covered by this gun mantlet. So the frontal turret armor is exceptionally good. It means you want to keep this tank hull down and expose this as your only armor whenever you can. But the armor is still better on the front of the hull than advertised as well, because again, on paper, it had 25 millimeters of frontal hull armor, but on the model, what you could see is that is sloped, and as a result, again, 25 millimeters of frontal hull armor, but angled at an effective angle of basically giving you 56, 57 millimeters of frontal armor. So really, this is going to hurt 25 millimeters against tanks firing HE, but if they're not firing HE or they're not firing premium, the sloping on this frontal armor is exceptionally good. And then you've got what looks like a weak spot, because it is rather flat, the viewport, or the driver's viewport here, and it is a weak spot, but it's still better than advertised. Instead of being 25 millimeters, it's actually 35 millimeters. So this is not exactly a weak spot, but it can be penned by lots of tanks. It's going to bounce a lot of tanks, but it's also got to be penned by a lot of tanks, because technically it's a weak spot. It's flat compared to the rest of the front of the tank. The lower glacis here is about 40 millimeters thick as well. So the front of this tank is advertised as 25 millimeters, and there's nowhere on the front of this tank that's 25 millimeters. It's essentially a heavy tank that's going to cause a lot of tanks problems. There are lots of tanks that can pen it from the front, but it's going to cause a lot of tanks problems. Now, the downside to this armor is the side armor, because the tracks don't cover very much of the side of this tank, and on top of that, unlike most tier 2s, the tracks count as 10 millimeters of spaced armor. On this tank, they only count as 5 millimeters of spaced armor, so the tracks have less armor than most of the tracks. So your tracks are most of the tanks of its own tier, so the tracks aren't going to be absorbing very many shots, and behind that, you've only got 15 millimeters of hull armor. So unfortunately, the side armor is absolutely terrible. Now, once again, you want to try and keep only the hull exposed, because only the turret exposed, I should say, because the turret is 37 millimeters, and it gets a little bit more effective if you hit it at a bad angle. But yeah, the turret armor, once again, very, very good. Try and keep the hull hidden. Don't give the side of your tank to enemy tanks if you can avoid it. And the rear of the armor can surprise. Rear armor can surprise a few people as well, because if they're auto-aiming, there's a good chance they might be auto-aiming here, and you've got about 30 millimeters of effective armor. Now, it's not good, but when you consider a lot of the other tier 2s might only have 25, 26 millimeters of penetration on their standard AP, especially if they're firing machine guns or something, then, you can bounce with the rear of this tank, just don't count on it. However, if someone knows what they're doing, and they're shooting your engine deck, you can see that the engine deck drops to 12.4 millimeters, so pretty much anything that fires at this tank is going to be able to pen its engine deck and avoid the rear of the turret, unless you got a high penetration gun because once again that's 37mm of armor. So this is basically frontally a heavy tank. Yes, if you get to the side, it's just as bad as any of the other tier 2 light tanks. If you get to the rear, it's probably a little bit better than most of the other tier 2 light tanks unless you're hitting the engine deck. But the front of this tank is extremely well armored. So about the only thing you've got to worry about is the fact that the turret is mounted on the left hand side of the tank, and that means when you're driving around left hand corners you expose a huge amount of your tank before you can get your gun on target. So if enemy tanks can pen the front of your tank, they're going to get lots of shots into you if you're going around a left hand corner before you can get your gun on target. But besides that, I think the T-45 is a tier 2 heavy tank as opposed to a light tank. Okay folks, let's check out this gun and this armor in action. Normally I would say check out the engine in action, but this is a tier 2 and I'm here on Mittengard. And yeah, if you're playing tier 2, you're gonna pretty much expect to play Mittengard almost half the time you click the play button. Occasionally you get mines, occasionally you get Himmelsdorf, but I don't know, every second game seems to be flaming Mittengard and there's not a lot of opportunity to test out the engine, so we're just gonna go. And I want to point out that because I'm not using binocs, which I probably could have put on the tank, and I'm using a camo net instead, I am not hanging around to let my binocs kick in and get a lot of easy spots. But in the meantime, I am spotting tanks. I've spotted 3 tanks so far. And look at the shot on the move. Shooting on the move is just so bad in this tank. That shot went like 5 or 6 meters above where I was aiming it. So now what you see me do is basically reversing and going hull down and using my 50mm or 60mm of frontal turret armor. And we're just going to start putting shots in here. So this replay, it's really all about, see that shot before being fully aimed goes over the Panzerjäger, but you could see me going hull down, playing the tank to its strengths, bouncing shots. That was a little bit fortunate there, taking out the Panzerjäger, but nice shot into the MS1. And yeah, he's only a tier 1, so I figure, you know what, let's face him frontally and advance. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow this down. I'm going to slow this down really far, get him with a shot in the move, and he has just shot me back, and oh, I missed it. So what you can see me doing is advancing frontally, but I'm making a fatal mistake here, because even though I'm frontally, and frontally my armor is very good, and even though he's only a tier 1, I shot him on the move, he shot me at the same time, and what he did was he actually penned my tracks. Because I'm at a bad angle here, he overmatched my side armor. I've only got 15mm of side armor, and even though I thought I was playing him frontally, you got to remember the side armor on this tank is garbage, so he was able to shoot me back. And you can see a shot straight in here into the side of my tank, penning me here because I've got no side armor. And this is one of the issues with this tank. So we'll go back to ×1. There we go. Back to full. Yeah, there we go. Fixed camera. So we're advancing again. So I gave up my side armor even though I thought I was placing him frontally. He was able to pen me. So first damage I've taken. We'll poke around this corner and deal with this FM42, bounce the MS1 again because I'm hull down, take out the MS1 for kill number 2, and get another shot in, and hang around for a moment and take him out, because the rate of fire is actually quite good. Oh, T1 goes down with a big ammo rack. So once again, you got to keep the front of this tank to enemy tanks. So we're advancing, you can see the acceleration, we're not getting anywhere near 41 kilometers an hour, but you know, we are doing a reasonable 35, so the, you know, maneuverability isn't terrible, but this is all about the gun and accuracy when firing before being fully aimed, and it's all about the frontal armor. So, shot in the move at close range. Now, once again, what we're coming into is I'm side scraping slightly, but I'm going to keep my front to this NC31. Now, what you're going to notice is he's going to be bouncing on the front of my tank, but until he actually figures out that maybe instead of bouncing on the front of the tank, he should just aim for this weak spot here because it's only about 35mm thick. So I might go into third party for this. So we're putting shots in, and he's bounced a couple of times, and there we go. He has just put a shot straight through my weak spot right here on front. Ah, come on, can we see it? Yeah, you can see the shot here that goes right through the weak spot in the front of the tank. So we take him out for kill number 5, but we've taken another hit. So M medium 1, we can take him out for kill number 6. And yeah, the armor. You've got weak spots, you've got weak side armor. You're going to see that again here. So we've flanked the enemy tanks. Just putting shots in. This guy doesn't even realize till now he's getting shot from behind. We take him out for kill number 7. And now, oh, there's a Panzerjäger. Oh, he's looking this way. So reverse, reverse, and shooting on the move, not good. Now, this is where there's another problem for the tank, because the turret is on the left-hand side. And I'm working around a left-hand corner, and that means that I can't get my gun on target to hit this Panzerjäger 1. So while I'm trying to side scrape, while I'm trying to figure out how I can get this Panzerjäger 1, a Leica tractor on 7 health appears. So what I do is I angle against the Panzerjäger 1. I'm trying to kill the Leica tractor, but then again, I've only got 15mm side armor, so this is a lot more dangerous than I realized when I was playing this game. But it wasn't the Leica tractor who got me, it was the Panzerjäger, because basically with 15mm of side armor, it means that any tank using a 45mm can overmatch your side armor. You can see me checking in the replay here going, how the hell did he pull that shot off? Well, he pulled it off because I was exposing more of my tank than was necessary, and even though I was perfectly side-scraped at a perfect angle for the Panzerjäger 1, my turret's on the left-hand side, he saw just enough of my tank to get a side shot in through the tracks, and even though it would normally have been absorbed by tracks, it would normally have bounced, because he's using a 45mm gun, unfortunately he overmatched my 15mm of side armor, and it didn't matter what angle he hit, it would have penned, and it killed me. So you can see me in the replay here going, how the hell did that happen? And then I realized, okay, yeah. So I only exposed my tracks, but he overmatched my side armor. So yeah, this tank has very, very good armor. When you go hull down, when you stay frontal to enemy tanks, you can do a good job. You know, the armor's very good, but as soon as you expose your side armor, as soon as you try to work around left-hand corners, as soon as tanks figure out they can shoot that flat weak spot in front of the tank, then the armor isn't quite so effective. But the one nice thing about this game, even though we picked up 7 kills, is no one was firing any premium ammunition. And basically, if any of those tanks had been firing premium ammunition, I wouldn't have bounced anywhere near as many shots. Every single shot would have penned. So anyway, there we go. So we picked up an ace for that game, but we died. But I did get to show you off, or show you the armor. You know, the armor can be extremely good when you go hull down and only expose your turret. You bounce a lot of shots. When you're driving towards tanks frontally, they're going to bounce unless they know where to aim. And if you expose your sides at all, or try and work a way around a left-hand corner, you're going to die, because the side armor is just so bad on the tank. But that's the T-45. It's a tier 2 heavy tank, in my opinion, as long as you don't give up your side or rear armor. But we also picked up a Top Gun, finished top on XP with 804 XP was enough to pick up the ace, 578 damage and 7 kills. So, you know, a reasonable game. And when the enemy tanks on the enemy team, when it's a tier 2 game or you're fighting tier 1s, the tank can be very, very good as long as it's not infested with M2 lights and as long as they're not spamming premium ammunition. So we fired 20 and we hit 17, and all 3 shots we missed were shots before we fully aimed. You know, shooting on the move, shooting before being fully aimed, this gun is not accurate at all. But at a close range fight, like on Mitten Guard, the accuracy actually was quite good. 7 shots received, or hit 7 hits received, 4 non-pens and 3 penetrations. 1 through with a weak spot in front, 2 through the side of my tank, because I've only got 15mm of side armor. Spotted 6, damaged 7, destroyed 7, and earned 16,000 credits, which is pretty standard for a tier 2. So, wasn't my first game of the day. I was actually playing games on this tank for the review. I have to spend a day in a tank, and I did not enjoy this day at all. But anyway, let's get on with things. So is the T-45 a good crew trainer? Well, I think you already know the answer to that, because it's only got 2 crew members. It's got a commander and a driver, and that means that only 3 tanks, even though the Russian tech tree is full of full of light tanks. In fact, from the tier 1, you branch out into three different lines of light tanks. But yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't match very many of them. 2 crew members means, hey, if you want to train up a crew for the MS-1, you can do that at tier 1. If you want to train up a crew for the T-60 that the T-45 was built to replace, you can train that up, because it's based on the T-60. It's also based on the T-70, and it's got the same crew layout, commander, driver. But that's it. Pretty much from tier 2, the BT-2 has 3 crew members, and it continues up the line, BT-7, AT-20. Basically, it moves up the entire Russian light tank. No other tank has 2 crew members. They all have 3, 4, or even 5. And then when we come down to the other light tank line here, the T-26, once again, again, commander, gunner, driver, you're going to be missing the gunner. T-46 is exactly the same. And then this line becomes mediums at the T-28 and becomes heavies at the KV-1. So, yeah, it's not a very, very good crew trainer. I'm not going to go through the rest of them because it's only got 2 crew members, and the chances of a Tier 10 light tank, having 2 crew members is 0. There you go. It's close. It got 3 crew members, but it doesn't have 2 crew members. So I suppose if you want to train up two of the crew members all the way up to as far as the light tank T100 LT, yeah, you can do that in the T45, but it's not a very, very good crew trainer. And now we're going to talk about equipment, because this is basically a Tier 2, and really you don't want to be spending a lot of equipment on it. However, I did. I've gone for 3 pieces of equipment here, and mainly because they were just lying around. I had spare ones in the garage, but let's talk about the equipment. So essentially not very many equipment choices because it is just a Tier 2. So toolbox, once again, if you've got a spare toolbox and you've no other equipment choices, put a toolbox on this tank. You don't have to worry about suspension because it's a premium tank, and just slot it in until you raise enough credits to get another piece of equipment. But toolbox only viable if you've got a terrible crew, only viable if you've got no other choices. So next thing we got to do is look at the enhanced gun lane drive, which is absolutely a viable choice for this tank because the aim time is absolutely terrible compared to the other Tier 2 premiums. So yeah, you've got to work on that aim time, and because it's only a Tier 2, you can't get vents or you can't get vert stabs, so that's the only choice you have for improving your aim time. So I had to do that for the tank, put enhanced gun lane drive on. It's very, very expensive. I spent $500,000 on this piece of equipment to put it on a Tier 2 premium. Yeah, I was an idiot once upon a time. I wish I had that 500,000 credits back now, but I don't. But back then I did. So yeah, I improved the aim time. So if you're serious about playing the T-45, that's one piece of a viable equipment. Cyclone filter, complete waste of time. It's only a Tier 2, waste of credits. Coated optics, once again, it's only a Tier 2, which means that I suppose most of the maps you're going to be on, the view range isn't that important, but I decided to forego optics altogether because most of the battles this tank is going to be fighting in are going to be Himmelsdorf, where you don't need view range. It's going to be Mittengard, where you don't need view range, or it's going to be, what's the other one? Mines, which you don't need that much view range. It can help if you can get up to the hill, but you don't need that much view range. So I thought there were better pieces of equipment than basically spending another $500,000 on this tank. Binocs, once again, are completely viable, again, as if you've got a spare equipment slot and the view range isn't very good. A Tier 2 Binocs would do a very good job, but I went for something else. I went for the camo net because essentially sometimes you've got to be a little bit more stealthy in this tank when you're sniping with it. It is an okay sniper if you let the gun aim in fully. The penetration is good enough to hit targets and pen targets over distance, but yeah, in those games where I get into Tier 3 games or games where I get into matches with a lot of M2 lights, then I went for the camo net. Now again, I would probably, looking at this right now, maybe I might try and switch the camo net out for Binocs or something else, but that's just what I went with. I think either are viable on the tank. Light spall liner, complete waste of time on this tank. There are tanks that are going to be shooting HE at Tier 2, but not very many, so I think the light spall liner is a waste of time. And then improved vents is something I did put on the tank because it only costs 20,000 credits, I believe, and so not a lot of money to spend on a Tier 2, and it improves the tank by about 2.5% overall. So that includes my aim time with that. So yeah, the 3 pieces of equipment I went with is the vents, the gun laying drive to improve my aim time and the tank overall, and then this is the only one that's a little bit iffy. You might want to take the camo net off and maybe try out Binocs, or if you're rich, you might want to try out coated optics, but I'm not going to carry out that experiment. That would leave me with just 1,000 credits, so I'm not going to do that. But they're my choices, and that's why I think this equipment is probably best for me on the tank, but as always, the choice is up to you. Okay folks, time for the overview game, a game where I try and show you as many strengths and weaknesses of whatever tank I'm playing in one replay. First of all, this is Mines, it's not Mittengard, which is one of the reasons I picked the replay. Secondly, if you look at the teams, there are 4 M2 lights on either side. This is typical matchmaking for a Tier 2 now. 4 M2 lights on the enemy team. 4 M2 lights on our team, and if our M2 lights are good, they're going to kill everyone before you can get into the game. And if their M2 lights are good, they're going to kill everyone before the game is, you know, a minute old. It all depends on who's got the better puppy kickers. Now, I happen to know the enemy team do, because I played against the platoon of M2 lights on the enemy team. You can see, hey, they're camoed up and they're going straight to hill. And yeah, I played them in a couple of games prior to this one, and they're both spam gold. I mean, they're both gold spammers, so I know what to expect. They went up to this position a couple of games earlier and then wrecked me from it, but yeah, they've gone hill, and now I'm stuck because I know that basically if they advance, they're going to get into the corner, and I can't move forward now. They'll shoot me in the rear. But if they come up and poke this corner, then maybe we can do some damage here. So yeah, this is that's another reason. Lots of M2 lights on either side is another reason I picked this replay. And then another reason is I'm a tier 2 and a tier 3 game, and I can show you that, you know, you do have to fire premium occasionally, but I probably didn't have to in this game. But yeah, our team not doing a lot to help each other. Our BT2 has just gone blue, and someone else is going to take him out, and I'm not doing anything in this early game because if I try to be aggressive, the M2 lights on the hill are going to absolutely rip me apart. So I'm sitting here with my camo net, my no binocs, but sitting here with my camo net, relying on my camo rating when a T3 HMC comes up behind me. So let the gun aim in as much as you can before shooting, and it takes 3 kills. But there we go. First one's down, so quick poke. No, M2 light's not looking at me. Or is he? Is he trying to? Yeah, he is. He is. He's trying to look at me. As I say, I ran into this guy earlier, but he's shooting at someone else. I'm trying to use my 6 degrees of gun depression here and try and keep the bush solid, but I can't. I can't use my 6 degrees of gun depression and keep the bush solid at the same time. But in the meantime, a T127 has appeared behind. So, okay, alright. And we bounce, because basically he's got good armor and he's a tier higher. But, oh, another M2 light. This guy is obviously not a professional because he went island instead of going hill. But he's moving out. Can we possibly pen him? And we bounce, because you bounce on M2 lights, because M2 light, not only is it fast maneuverable, have a really, really dangerous gun, its armor can be surprisingly good. So, alright, we take him out for kill number 2, but I'm reversing back down because I'm waiting for this M2 light to start blind shooting the bush, as he did it previously, but he didn't blind shoot. Now he's focused on an FCM-36 in front of him, so is he going to reverse? So there is RT in play, and that's another reason why I'm being a little bit passive here. But my time for being passive is over. Marder gets spotted. I spot the Marder a little bit too late on the other side. Too late to get the kill, but M2 light's coming down. Look at this, not fully aimed. And the shot goes 2-3 meters to the right of where I was aiming it. This gun just cannot shoot at full, or unless you're fully aimed. It's just so inaccurate. And that shot wouldn't have killed the M2 light, it wouldn't have saved the FCM-36, and even though the FCM-36 is extremely well armored, it's not going to stop an M2 light who's firing premium ammunition. So while RT is still in play, I'm debating whether or not to go up and get the M2 light, but I have to. I have to kill this M2 light. So I've switched to premium ammunition because I cannot afford to bounce. Now, I don't need premium ammunition to pen him, but I've bounced with regular ammo against M2 lights, and I really, really need to kill this guy. He's just taken out our Panzerjäger 1. We're losing because this guy's on the corner, even though the team it's 50-50. I have to take him out with 1 round of premium ammunition. You know, I couldn't have risked not taking him out. So up to kill number 3, and I'm just going to hang here till I'm sure I've dropped off radar and RT isn't focused on me. And about now, yeah, there we go. I've just realized I'm still on premium ammunition. Time to switch back to regular AP. So it's just me versus 3 tier 3s, 1 tier 2 on the enemy team. And we've got an SU-76M who hasn't moved from that spot all game, and RT. Now, I want to say hats off to this RT because he is the type of RT player I like. This is one of the situations, by the way, I'm moving up here to try and spot, but this is one of the situations where maybe binocs instead of the camo net for equipment would have been better. I've still got decent view range because I've got a good crew. Well, not a good crew, they're working on their second skill at the moment, but yeah, I've got reasonable view range across enemy spawn, but I'm not spotting anything. But as I say, this M7 Priest, while our TD is hiding at the back, our M7 Priest is on the advance, and then our TD, the SU-76M, manages to crash and kill himself. So not only do we have players TKing each other at the beginning of this game, now we've got them crashing against each other, crashing So yeah, it's suddenly become a lot tougher. This M7 Priest found the IKV-72. Now, I'm aware there are tanks camping in their spawn, so I don't want to kind of shoot this guy from up on the edge of the hill. M7 Priest goes down. I'm going to try and help him, but no! Wow, he did an amazing job. So he takes out the IKV-72 by shotgunning him in the face. He's asking for help. That's what I'm going to do, so I'm going to advance. But I love that. Well played, sir, Rico. So he spotted the Vespa, and I was going to shoot the Vespa, but then the M3 Stuart pops up, and the M3 Stuart is a tier 3. And with regular AP, I pen. So shooting regular AP, I pen. I get spotted, pen again. Switch to premium ammunition, and I'm going to risk one more, but no, he's got more than enough pen to go through the front of my tank. He's a tier 3. So fall back, just giving him my turret, trying to use my 6 degrees of gun depression. Again, firing premium ammunition because I can't afford to bounce here. The enemy RT took out our RT, but can't afford to bounce. And there we go, switch back to regular AP. I needed to kill him, but there's still a Cruiser 2 that hasn't been spotted. Where is the Cruiser 2? Has to be camping spawn. The Vespa is a one-hit kill, but he's advancing. Need to wait till he drops off radar. There we go. Now I go for it. So where's the Vespa going? But yeah, my biggest worry at the moment is the Cruiser 3. But you're getting to see the armor. You're getting to see we weren't able to bounce at tier 3. You're getting to see the gun depression. You're getting to see the gun in action. You're getting to see the mobility. So we're getting up to 41. We finally reach our top speed, but we only do that when we're going downhill. Usually we're going to be reaching about 35. And I'm just dreading running into the Cruiser 3 because he can pen me if he gets to my side and rear. But we're going to advance, see if we can find RT. We found him. Quick auto aim, take him out, and again, evasive maneuvers because the Cruiser 3 could be anywhere. Turn my tank towards the direction I think the Cruiser 3 is, but okay, no fire. So yeah, where is this guy? Now you're going to see the other reason I chose this replay. Lots of reasons I chose this replay, but in my summation, what I'm basically going to say is this tank, I would probably only play it these days on ×3s or ×5s because it's not a good crew trainer, but there isn't a lot of choice for Russian light tanks. So we've managed to find a Cruiser 3 and he's AFK, so this is an easy kill. This is an easy kill, but watch what I'm planning to do. I leave him on 16 health, and then I'm going to advance into the cap, and I'm going to cap out, because I'm playing this game on a ×3 day, and I want the ×3, I want my crew. So at the moment I've got the commander and gunner, or commander and driver from the LTG, which were very, very inexperienced. They're both on about 99%. Well, the commander's got 6 cents, but the driver has got 99% on his first skill, hasn't got 100% camo. So I want crew XP. I want to use this as a crew trainer. And you can see me in cap. People are saying go, 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 and I'm saying going to cap before kill, sorry. And then all of a sudden it's good game, I'm a noob. So I'm a noob because I'm trying to get more XP out of this ×3. But yeah, this is another reason I would only play this tank. The only reason I have to play this tank is play it on ×3s, play it on ×5s. You can see me in chat going, ×3 XP, need all the XP. And they're saying attack, kill. No, I need all the XP. Go, 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 go. I need all the XP, dudes. Sorry. And from this game, what I went my driver on the T-45, he went from 99% on the first skill to 27% on the second skill. So got the first skill and all the way up 27% on the second skill. That's how much or how important the XP was. But one shot, kill him. No, they still don't understand. They still don't understand. Kill, go, 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 go. They don't understand what I'm trying to do here. So gonna wait till I finish capping out, and then I'm going to shoot him. Then I get the kill XP and I get the cap XP. I pick up a cheeky invader medal, and all that XP goes into my crew training. So there we go. Base captured, last tank killed. So you got to see the engine, finally a map that allowed me to show off the engine. You're rarely going to get above 35 kilometers an hour in this tank, even though its top speed is 41, unless you're going downhill. You got to see the gun in action. It is quite accurate when you let it fully aim, but when you try and take shots without it being fully aimed, it is incredibly inaccurate. Shooting on the move, incredibly inaccurate. But you got to see that even in a tier 3 game, even though I did fire a couple of premium rounds, I didn't actually need them. I didn't need to fire them, but because I wanted to to win the game because I wanted some revenge on an M2 light tank who killed me in an earlier game. I did fire a couple of premium rounds, but you don't need them. I was penning those tanks without the benefit of premium rounds. I just used the rounds to be, extra safe and make sure I picked up the kills. But anyway, as I say, we picked up a cheeky invader medal because I was going for XP in that game as opposed to anything else. We picked up Top Gun, finished top on XP with 913, 565 damage done, 6 kills was enough, 22 shots fired, and we hit 19. So basically, of the shots we fired, when we were fully aimed, we were hitting. When we weren't fully aimed, we were missing. And even though the penetration's very good on the gun, we still managed to bounce a couple of rounds. Now, the rounds we bounced were premium rounds, or at least some of them. So, I was penning with regular AP, switched to premium to make sure of the kill, and then ended up bouncing. So, yeah, Murphy's Law. Spotted 3, damaged 7, destroyed 6. Now, in that game, it's perhaps Binox would have done me much better than the Camonet, but as I say, that's the one piece of equipment I'm unsure about on the tank. I probably, maybe should use Binox instead of a Camonet, but as I say, we spotted 3, damaged 7, destroyed 6, did 153 assistance damage, 100 base cap points, picked up 14,000 for that game, less than the first game, but we did fire, I think it was 3 premium rounds in that game, so, ammo was a little bit more expensive, but it was on a times 3, guys. It was on a times 3, so forgive me. That was 5,000 XP I picked up from that game because of capping, that's basically the reason I would recommend playing the T-45. I mean, it's not a tank you're going to play regularly, but on times 3s, on times 5s, take it out. You're going to get a lot of XP if you can get a good game out of it. And it is a premium tank. Even though it's a gift tank, it is a premium tank. So you can see premium vehicle tier bonus. I got an extra 1,000 XP in there because it was playing a premium tank. So, premium tank, even though it was a gift. So there we go. Okay, folks, time to sum up. If the T-45 becomes available and you don't have it yet, is it worth it? Well, there's a lot to like about this tank. The 51mm of penetration means you can pen most of the tanks you meet. You don't need to fire very much premium ammunition. And even though the DPM is not amazing, it's still got pretty good rapid firing at about 17 to 18 rounds a minute. The acceleration and top speed aren't terrible. They're not great, but they're not terrible. They wouldn't be a weak spot or weak point. The traverse speed and the turret traverse speed are exceptionally good. They are very, very good. The frontal armor and turret armor, frontal turret armor, frontal hull armor, amazingly good, unless enemy players are spamming premium ammunition. This is a tank that technically has problems penning itself from the front. If you meet another T-45 in a T-45, unless you're aiming for this weak spot here, or maybe the lower glacis, it has problems penning itself from the front. So the frontal armor is exceptionally good, but it does have downsides. It's only got 2 crew members, unfortunately, and with only 2 crew members, it's not a very good crew trainer. And it's also one of these tanks, because of the only 2 crew members, it's if one of the crew members or both of your crew members can get knocked out very, very quickly, especially if you come across an autoloader. So this is one of these tanks where you can get knocked out of the battle with both crew members dying before you, while you still have hit points on your tank. So while your frontal armor is very, very good, the side armor is absolutely garbage, and the rear armor is terrible if people are shooting at your engine deck. So if you get to, if enemy tanks get to your side and rear, the armor is terrible. The turret is mounted on the left-hand side of the tank, so it means when you're going around left-hand corners, you expose a huge amount of your tank, which means that if tanks can pen you, they're going to shoot you before you can shoot them or get your gun on target. It's only got 6 degrees of gun depression, and most of the other tier 2 premiums have better gun depression, so it can be tricky sometimes trying to go hull down, which is the best way to play this tank, and trying to use your gun depression. The accuracy is absolutely terrible unless you're fully aimed, so you have to fully aim, otherwise the accuracy is bad, and it's terrible at shooting on the move. So it's got weak spot, or a lot of weak points, but it's got a lot of strengths as well. So overall, I like the tank. I actually do like the tank, but I don't like playing it. It's weird. I like the tank, but I don't like playing it, and the reason isn't anything to do with the tank. It's the fact that low-tier matchmaking and low-tier map rotation is just so bad at the moment. As a tier 2, it can compete with other tier 2s, But when the teams are full of M2 light stat patters or puppy kickers, Panzer 38Hs, Panzer 2Js, FCM 36 pack 40s, and more TDs that have more than enough penetration to deal with you frontally, and more players willing to fire all premium ammunition or willing to hit the 2 key as soon as they bounce the first shot of standard AP, your amazing frontal armor means less and less. So when you can get this tank into the right matchup, the tank can be great, but that's getting rarer and rarer, and having to play mitten guard at all at any time, and the only other choices when you play this tank being Himmelsdorf and Mines, and occasionally Runeberg if you're bottom tier in a tier 3 game. The map choices, map rotation, also make this tank very tiresome and very boring to play too. So if it becomes available and you don't have one yet, it's not worth buying an expensive package just to get your hands on this tank. Only buy the package if you want the package, and you get the tank as a bonus, because after a few games you'll realize that you're not going to be playing it regularly, and the only reason to want the tank is maybe to do daily doubles, or if you're training a Russian light tank crew, maybe just playing it on ×3 or ×5 events for extra crew XP and free XP. But if you're looking for a Russian premium light tank crew trainer, well, actually I might as well, let's see if we can get the filter up here, because light tanks, let's go with, oh, that's China, let's go with Russia. Let's go with tier 2. There's not a lot of choice. There's not a lot of choice when it comes to playing tier 2 or premium Russian light tanks. They're all low tier, and they're all either extremely rare or gifted tanks. So, you've got tier 2s, you've got tier 3s, and then you've got a tier 4 in the Valentine. So there's not a lot of choice when it comes to trying to train up Russian light tank crews and premium tanks. But what I will say is there's a new tier 8 T-44 lightweight on its way. I believe it was in super testing a few months ago, so there are plans to bring out a new tier 8 premium light tank for the Russians, but all the other premium light tanks for the Russians are tier 3 or tier 2, with the exception, as I say, of the Valentine at tier 4. And of all of them, I mean, really, the T-127 is the only one. T-127 is the only one I would actually like to play regularly. There really isn't any other competition here. So, T-127, if you're training up a low tier, if you want to play low tiers to train up a crew, that's the choice I'd go for over the T-45, and maybe the BT-7A, the BT-7 artillery, just for those occasions when you want to do some trawling or just messing around and aren't taking the game too seriously. So, overall, is it worth it? Probably not. Probably not. I would say it's only worth it if you're a collector. I don't think it's bad, but low-tier matchmaking and map rotation, they're just not fun anymore. So, anyhow, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.